Hi, and welcome to Plugged In. For those of you who follow the series, you probably know much of what I'm about to say, but I am Catherine Spetch, and I co-lead our work across the global games industry here at Hodges Berndsen, where we specialise in executive search as well as leadership assessment and devising coaching and development programmes. Plugged In sees me speak to various leaders, founders, innovators in the space. And today I'm thrilled to be joined by the brilliant Yaron Leyvand, Executive Vice President at Zynga. And it's fair to say that both Yaron and Zynga have a hugely successful background. And I would say both are grounded in entrepreneurial spirit, although Yaron might correct me. And both have been through various iterations in terms of career and organisationally. So Yaron has spent the last 10 years with Zynga, leading various business units before taking on the role as EVP 18 months ago. And given his tenure in the organisation and the growth that he's overseen, I was really keen to get his views on what is a particularly complex and challenging market at the moment. So firstly, thank you, Yaron, or maybe firstly, hello.
Hello, nice to speak with you.
So look, it's been a challenging year for the industry. IDFA still an obstacle to overcome, especially or more so for smaller studios with less first-party data, high interest rates, discoverability challenges, and that has kind of culminated in many mobile studios pushing pause on creating new IP or stopping it altogether. So I was keen to understand what you think the knock-on effect of that might be. You know, what do you think the next 2 years has in store for mobile games?
It's a good topic to start with because we are in a quite dynamic environment from the get-go, and obviously in the last year a lot of changes happened at the same time with some external pressure, which created more challenges to operate live games, but even more so to create new. Which is interesting because different companies have taken a different view on this. Some have decided to wait a bit. Some have decided to go more aggressive on acquiring external studios, and some are developing new games, original new games. I think we are taking an approach that because of our scale, because the expertise and the talent that we have here, that we can take a path to create new games. We are definitely focusing on live, but new need to be part. We believe that new need to be part of every gaming company. This is what we make here. So we are going to invest in it in this environment as well. What it requires, though, is more discipline on how you deploy the talent. Where do you think you have a good hit, and when do you think it's time to cut your losses and move to the new idea? And I think this is kind of what we have refined really well in the last few, probably a year and a half, even more so with all of these changes, is to get good signals on what it has. First of all, we kind of call it the 3 steps. So the first one is you need to find the fun, something that I want to play today, and I want to play it again tomorrow. So some kind of indication of whether this core game is exciting for users. The second one is to find that we are not the only one that want to play that. That there is a kind of a big enough audience that is going to enjoy this game for a while. And then maybe the third step would be, can we make it as a business? Can the unit economic work? And in each one of those steps, you need to be, put the emotion aside, because everyone that create game really want to see it out, but to understand whether this is you got enough signals to move forward and to get to the next step. And then obviously you launch a game. I don't think you cannot re-engineer a hit, but you can understand when there are some red flags during this process, whether you have a better chance. And I think we have launched a game early this month, and we are going to launch more in the upcoming quarters. So I'm excited about this kind of evolution. I think every time that there's external pressure and the dynamic is harder, it's forced you to really think about how you can do things better.
Yes, yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, when I look across the industry, it does feel as though for those who aren't investing in new IP, clearly then growth needs to come from elsewhere. And a lot of it is about improving live service capability, but actually then you need to make sure that M&A strategy is really strong and that, you know, those acquisitions can support growth, which is equally challenging at the moment and probably more difficult to truly get right. So it's a difficult balance to strike, and you know it's difficult to really get the right buy-in for acquisitions at the moment because it's challenging. You know, and I mentioned interest rates. It's challenging to acquire the right thing and at the right price. And you know, yes, okay, our valuations are down, but interest rates are up, so it's expensive to borrow that money. So I think a balance of the two, which is obviously what you're doing, is the right thing by all accounts. Great, that's brilliant. Thank you for taking us through that.
I think, Catherine, just to add to that, I think we are fortunate enough to have a strong balance sheet. We are fortunate enough to have a really broad games in probably all the categories. So even if there are categories that have a harder time now, we have something else to balance them. We have the ability to see what works in one and try to see if we can adopt it in the other company. I understand that not all of the companies have that, which is kind of harder. But yes, we are trying to deploy the same kind of way of looking at the new games when we do M&As as well. So we know whether this new concept from a different company also have a good chance to be hit.
Yeah, understood. And as you said, it very much depends on size, scale, balance sheet, you know, financials as to, you know, the options that are available to studios at the moment. And I mean, look, I'm always interested in talking about leadership. I'd be in the wrong job if I wasn't. The other thing that I was keen to touch upon with you was, you know, the fact that, you know, we're talking about acquisitions now. Zynga have made a lot of acquisitions over the years, or certainly a significant number, and then have subsequently joined the Take-Two group as well. From a leadership perspective, what do you think has been the most interesting leadership learning, if you like, from those activities?
So I've been at Zynga when we have had different approaches on M&A, and obviously in the last 6-7 years we have been very active in the M&A space. And if you're working in entertainment, which is kind of obviously gaming is in, then you need to embrace the different talent. And they have like a really successful creators have their way of doing things, and it doesn't need to be the same in all of the different studios, which is a really important learning, because our instinct, our first get, things that we try to achieve is, okay, I see this working here, let's just, do the same thing in all of the different studios, and it doesn't work. And I think early on at Zynga, we have tried to do more hands-on integration, making sure that all of them have the same way of looking at opportunities or risks and stuff like that, or structure and talent and culture. And I think we have changes quite a lot. We obviously want to see that this is a good fit for the culture of Zynga. I think as a large company, we want to make sure that we are plugged in the right way. But I see as a collective of the different groups as more of a, we have expertise, we have know-how, we have a lot of knowledge that we had throughout these years, and everyone that is joining us will bring their own viewpoint, but we can offer like a buffet of here are things that we do really well. So we want an experiment system, we have that, we know how do we have really strong CI, we have, our approach on a lot of aspects of game creation. But it's much better when the game team or the studio is saying, okay, I had, and this works well, how can I leverage it, instead of by the next quarter, by the next year, I want to see all of those. kind of things in the game. When you do so, the roadmap of the game become all of the things that are pushed from above, and the success is really getting impact. So the other thing is that usually the companies that are you desire to join, you want them for the leadership skill as well. So you want them in because you trust that the leadership is good and you see the results. And in order to do that, they should need to be excited as well. And if you kind of doing a different approach, I think was very common now, I think changing, it created dynamics that really creative leaders are not super excited about that. So the combination of that is really embracing the fact that you will have different cultures. It's much harder to manage. It's much harder, like the processes are different, but I think the results will be better. So it's kind of how we are kind of embracing the fact that they are different, and especially in a creative process, is probably an advantage.
And I think the way of doing that successfully is having an in-depth knowledge of those studios that you're acquiring. So it's not about coming in and telling them how things should be done, but it's actually about sitting back, observing, understanding them as individuals. And absolutely, there will be areas where they can improve, because every business can, and every person, every leader can. And it's about identifying those areas and how you at group level, or not even at group level, but perhaps another portfolio company or subsidiary might be able to support with something that they're perhaps less so good at. But actually really understanding, something that might seem quite niche to you does work really well for them, and can that be taken elsewhere at group level, or somewhere else in the organization. And as you said, it is changing. I see it in the way that I speak with groups, and also the smaller studios that are becoming acquired. There is a shift, and you see that those that spend the time to get to understand how studio culture works and what is positive about it and what isn't, means that there's a more effective response from those studios. And they will typically then come to group and actually ask for, you mentioned this buffet of options. They will then be more likely to reach out and actually ask for that support and really engage with that support, rather than feeling as though it's been prescribed to them. So that makes a lot.
100%. I think the buying on changing different things that come that way is much better. It does require to look at teams that are more mature, usually, that have the ability to be open, both on the good thing, but also on things that are not working. So when you evaluate a potential M&A, part of that is to understand whether they can work in this model. I understand that this model might not be for everyone, and especially for teams that this is the first attempt in games, it might be harder. They might need more guidance.
Yeah, agreed. And on the theme of learnings from the role, especially in your current role, now that you oversee all of the studios, what's been the most unexpected learning for you as an individual from another studio or from somebody else?
So part of that kind of working with different leaders. So most of my job is I'm working with the leaders from all of the different groups and trying to help with their roadmap on live, roadmap on new, the culture, all of the different struggles they have. And because we are in many countries, we have students in many countries, they have very different culture. And what I find fascinating is that, when you have game creation, you can kind of list what are the challenges that are happening in each studio in each kind of phase in their life cycle. And while they are not identical, they have a lot of commonality. But how to approach them, how to do this in a team that is, from small giant, from our teams in Helsinki will be very different than our teams in Turkey Peak or in North America studio. They are coming to the point with different approaches, and this is kind of why it's exciting to work in this, because there are many ways to solve this problem. And one thing that I think we have done pretty well is once team had done something that works or something that, you know, they tried and didn't, we created a culture that they can share with the other studio leaders and say, you know what, this feature was amazing, or this approach on the structure didn't work, or the process, you know, is holding us back. And if you create the right open dynamic, you can have that kind of accelerate growth throughout the portfolio.
And does that happen organically now, Yaron? Do they reach out to each other and share those learnings?
So more than they used to. You know, this is ever evolving, so we are pushing for that to happen more and more. And I think you can definitely see that happening in some aspects organically. I think features and products are sharing a lot, and some tech can do that. You know, process is harder because they have, you know, a different starting point, but it's definitely part of our mission is to create this organic information sharing between the different groups. So we have strengths on our, because of our size, because of our diversified portfolio. I have said that I think you can see that there is much more to share if you take some of it and you adopt to yours, you change it, you tailor it to what you have in your own, you know, culture team category. You can get a lot from it. So I think we are definitely not, you know, fully there, but we are doing this quite well.
Yeah, on that journey. Brilliant. And to round things off on an exciting note, what's exciting you most about the industry right now? You know, we've talked about what you think might be in store, but is there something that you're feeling quite positive and excited about?
So I think that one of those things that I think might be overlooked by people that are just, you know, joining this industry now. But if you take kind of a step back and you look at the audience, the players, what do they, what are they comfortable with? And if you go 5-7 years ago and we said, let's do something that is social for games, it will look very different than what we are doing now. So the tolerance or what players think that is complex have changed drastically. So I think every casual games now have a lot of depth in it. There are systems that are, you know, 5-7 years ago, we would never imagine that audience can understand and work with and enjoy. And I think this is kind of one of the things that is more interesting because you can see cross from different categories, moving ideas from mid-core to casual, or moving ideas that are for much more in-depth gameplay is very common now. So yeah. I think this is going to open and create new categories, new areas to innovate and to really kind of double down on the experience for users. And I think this is not going away. You know, only thing is going to go even more. So as our players, which I think at the beginning they wouldn't identify them as players, you know, early on in the Zynga early days, but now we're all players and we understand the games and the mechanic much better. So this is super exciting.
Yeah, and I think that lends itself to the convergence across mobile and PC and console. Yes, you know, very different worlds in lots of ways. Yes, have their, you know, unique challenges and you know, positives as well. But I think that, you know, that is what's blurring the lines. It's that kind of propensity from players, one, to see themselves as players or gamers from the mobile world, but two, their propensity to be open to innovation and a more in-depth gameplay and a more social experience and all of those things. So yeah, I agree. So it'll be interesting to see what comes in the next few years. So thank you very much for taking the time out, Yaron. Really appreciate it. And I found it really interesting. So much appreciated.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to our next time. Thank you.
Me too.